Welcome everyone to Wednesday Night at the Lab. I'm Tom Zinnan. I work here at the UW-Madison Biotechnology Center. I also work for the Division of Extension Wisconsin 4-H. And on behalf of those folks and our other co-organizers, PBS Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Alumni Association, and the UW-Madison Science Alliance, thanks again for coming to Wednesday Night at the Lab. We do this every Wednesday night, 50 times a year. Tonight, it's a great pleasure to welcome back to Wednesday Night Lab Marianne Fairbanks from the School of Human Ecology. She gave her first talk from the lectern here in 2016, and tonight she's going to talk with us about design, innovation, and entrepreneurship, the case study of Hello Loom. One of the reasons I'm so interested in this is that before I was 10, I had a loom like this that a lot of people my age had for making pot holders. It was a great way to perforate your feet or the feet of your siblings if you left it on the ground. So I'm not an accomplished weaver at all, but it's been a great source of insight and metaphor for me throughout my life, and I think Marianne Fairbanks has invented a great thing with this Hello Loom. Marianne, if you'd come up here, and turn on your mic, I'm going to ask you the 5 questions we ask everybody.
Okay.
Where were you born?
Holland, Michigan.
And where'd you go to high school?
Holland, Michigan.
And where'd you go for your undergrad and what'd you study?
University of Michigan, I studied art, fibers specifically.
And then what advanced degrees did you get? They're going to be possibly different than the PhD that I'm used to?
Yes, I have a terminal degree, but it's a Master's of Fine Arts.
MFA, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And where's that from?
The School of the Art Institute in Chicago.
Nice. And when did you come to UW-Madison?
I came in 2014.
Very good. Tonight we get to hear about ingenuity and creativity and artistry that went into your invention called Hello Loom. And with that, please join me in welcoming Marianne Fairbanks back to Wednesday Night at the Lab.
Hello and good evening. It's such a pleasure to be here. So thank you, Tom. I'm always sort of amazed by Tom's enthusiasm for all of the research on his campus. And so it's a pleasure to be invited here and to tell you a little bit about my research and this product in particular. So Hello Loom is what this is about. But I decided that to kind of show you how I got to inventing this, I had to tell you a little bit more about my history, which Tom just asked me a little bit about, but I'm going to tell you more about. So I got my BFA from the University of Michigan in the 90s, and Sherry Smith was my professor there. As a weaver, she taught me everything I know about weaving, or at least knew then, and I was also her studio assistant. So I thought it'd be great to honor her by showing a slide of this really interesting work that she was making back in the 70s. From there, I went to the Art Institute, like I said, and I studied, I also studied fibers and material studies. It was called there to get my second degree, my graduate degree. But at the time, even though I was studying fibers and materials there as well, I became really interested in participation-based artwork, artwork that connected in communities, that was social, that was sort of outside of galleries and in public spaces. And so I'm showing you this as an example of like how I immerse myself in collaborative work and social practice work. I went on to co-run an art space. It was an experimental cultural center in the Rogers Park neighborhood of Chicago, and it was called Mess Hall. And this was a place that I co-ran with 7 or 8 other people for 10 years. And so it was foundational, again, in my understanding of how to share art, have intellectual discussions. It was about everything under the sun, but this was a primary part of my art making for a long time, this kind of social practice work. Transitioning to another project I did in a collaboration with my partner at the time, Jane Palmer, was a collaborator with me. We made these solar garments, both a bag and a jacket. And this I'm showing you because this eventually turned into a business called Noon Solar, where we made these accessories and launched a small business. And so I have entrepreneurship in my history as well, and technology and innovation. So if I hadn't had that, I don't think I would have ever gotten to launching and having now another business. So here, I do lots of things in and around weaving. When I got to campus here, I had been teaching at the School of the Art Institute for 13 years before I came to this campus as a tenure track professor. And I was just wanting to show you a little bit about sort of the work that I'm doing now, which is focused a lot more back on weaving. This is a Jacquard woven piece from 2018. But I also try to expand weaving and ideas about weaving into other arenas. So this was one of my favorite projects. I was commissioned to make this design that went on a bus in Des Moines, Iowa for 1 year. And so I liked the idea of expanding weave structures and taking some of my design imagery and getting them really blown up, because weaving, as we all know, is very small and intricate. So one of my goals of sharing it and sort of gathering appreciation for what weaving is by making it large. And I mean, come on, can I get bigger than a bus? Maybe, but that was pretty exciting. And then also I test out other options. So this is an example of a blanket design that's industrially woven, and I have for sale. So I'm interested in figuring out different ways to get my work in the world. And different materials. So sometimes I weave, and sometimes this is a laser cut piece on the left that's a sort of window installation made out of Tyvek, and it's spray painted. So I don't feel beholden to any one way of making, but I'm definitely very interested in textiles and fibers. So I wanted to share this quote about, and sort of put in parentheses why textiles are important at all to think about and why I think they're important. So this is a quote that I share on the first day of my weaving class here at UW. And this is by the textile historian Beverly Gordon, who actually was a professor on this campus before I got here. And I'll read it to you now. So textiles are a central part of human consciousness. We can all see this, for example, in the constant references to cloth and thread that not only appear in archetypal mythic stories, but serve as metaphors for important core cultural ideas throughout the world. We have long used textile ideas to describe ourselves, our societies, and even our place in the universe. The very qualities of textiles, such as their ability to absorb, enfold, contain, expand, and tie together, make them important symbols. They have strong associations and stand for many of our organizing concepts. They seem to have a living presence, in part due to their malleability and the fact that they can, seemingly magically, become larger. Cloth making, starting with spinning, is seen as a generative activity. It is equated to making life. Cloth is universally also significant in every ritual that is part of the mortal human journey. So that's epic, right? It's just sort of trying to tell you that textiles are at the core of everything, which my family knows. Everything we watch, everything we see, I always point out how textiles are there as a metaphor. So I thought it'd be good to sort of tell you where I'm coming at textiles and weaving from and how I think they're so important. So now let's jump to what weaving is specifically. So weaving is a process of interlacing two sets of yarns at right angles. The thread that lie along the length of the fabric are the warp threads, and the threads that lie across the width of the fabric are called the weft threads. And generally, the warp is held in tension. And if it is, everything goes better. If it's not, you just got a mess of threads, right? But this is key, and I'm sure you've all heard warp and weft, and maybe you've never thought about what that means. When I'm teaching my students these words, it's always very difficult to get them to remember. My strategy is to think of warp speed, warp time, in like that intro to Star Wars where the letters are coming at your face. And that's how the warp threads are coming at us when we're on the loom. They're coming towards us, they're in tension. The weft threads are the ones that go back and forth from left to right, left to right, weft, left to right. So we need these little tricks, otherwise we can never remember any of this terminology, is my theory. Okay, so then let's talk about, well, what is a loom? The basic purpose of any loom is to hold the warp threads under tension to facilitate the interweaving of the weft threads. This is a very simple frame loom. This is a tapestry loom and another frame loom. You can see this woman here is weaving. Everything's done by hand. All of the threads are on these little bobbins, and she's pulling every color through those tension-bound warp threads. And it's vertical. This is a very old loom that is pretty inspiring. It's called a warp-weighted loom. So before we had floor looms, we decided we were going to hold the warp threads in tension with weights, stones. There was early things that we now call donuts that are like sort of ceramic objects that would weight the warp down so the weaver could weave and interlace the weft through. One of my personal favorites, tablet weaving. So another invention, here you'll see examples made out of Viking bone, Viking aged bone or antler. So the idea here is that the warp threads are spread, and as you turn the tablet, a different shed or opening of the warp threads is made, and then you can pass the weft through and come up with a new pattern. So that's another really cool weaving technology. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. A floor loom, here's an early example of a floor loom. So you can see now things are becoming horizontal, and we're sitting at the loom much more comfortably in a way. But also here I wanted to point out, you can see the device. Yep, she has the things that she's pushing on, the treadles, but she also has the harnesses. So there's the devices that we're using to lift the threads to create new patterns. Just like the tablet was like manually turning the cards to open a new shed, we call it. Now she's stepping on a treadle and it's lifting a set of threads. That's called the heddles, or the harness rather. Ooh, I'm going the wrong way again. And then a backstrap loom. So this is another really amazing loom, but in this case, you're using your body's tension against an object. So you're pulling those warp threads, you're attaching one end to a rock or a stick or a doorknob, and then you're pulling your weight against it to create the tension that's necessary for weaving. What's awesome with this one is there's something called a string harness, where every other thread is laced into this string and on a stick, and you can pull up the thread. So one of the sheds opens with this string harness, and the other one opens with this like sort of wooden stick, which is the D of this illustration, or F rather. And another really amazing example of loom and weaving technology is this, called a rigid heddle loom. And this reminds me so much of sort of the binary system that is weaving, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But in this system, you put every other thread. One's going through the hole, one's going through the slit. One's going through the hole, one's going through the slit. So you can lift it, and the one in the hole has to stay where the holes are, and the ones that aren't, they get to raise. And so it's this very simple plain weave that every other thread is lifting or lowering. And here we have the Hello Loom. So the Hello Loom is a laser-cut frame loom, right? It's holding the yarns in tension. It's not as sophisticated as all those things I just showed you, but it holds the thread in tension. Again, how did I get to this design, and why does it matter, or why is it important? So I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about when I first came here to UW. I became a faculty member in the School of Human Ecology, and I have to admit I had no idea, like zero idea what that meant. I studied art at the University of Michigan, and I studied art again in my graduate degree, so I just didn't have any encounter ever with this. But as I came to understand, home economics had evolved into human ecology, right? And human ecology is a branch of sociology dealing especially with the spatial and temporal interrelationships between humans, their economic and social political organization. So why is textiles, what I do, in human ecology? Well, we have to go back and understand what home economics was, right? So in home economics, we had interior design and textiles and apparel design. So it was all the women who were studying back in the early 1900s would go to the School of Home Economics right up the road here on campus, which was right next to the School of Agriculture, which still is right next to the School of Agriculture. Anyway, it's sort of funny to try to explain this. Sometimes when I give talks in other countries, they don't have any of this kind of history, really. So I made this slide at some point to try to explain what that was. And I mean, there's people like me who didn't know what it was either. So anyway, as I was learning what weaving meant within a home economics history as I got to this campus, I was coming across lots of journals like this, which is called Practical Weaving Suggestions, where these were disseminated as directions for how to get the textile that you need for your home. And I had never encountered such a thing before. Again, like I told you, I studied art. I had no idea about sort of utilitarian weaving on some level. And so I found these really fascinating, and I sort of delved in deep and used them as some inspiration for some of my other artwork. But I was really interested in, I guess, the dissemination of information, why these were being distributed, who was weaving on that from the directions that were in these journals, who came up with the patterns. All of the things just became very interesting to me. And then I also did a lot more research. I was really interested in weaving education around production and craft. So again, being in the human ecology area, I'm teaching textile design. So these students are wanting to learn how to apply their weaving knowledge to designed objects, to things that are utilitarian. So I had to kind of get up to speed about what that meant. And I found this early research from Berea College in Kentucky, where the president there had started this thing called the Fireside Industries. This initiative was inspired by the arts and crafts movement and sought to encourage hand weaving and to create a fashionable marketplace for the crafted goods. Hold on a second. The program provided women with a place to sell the goods woven on their looms and inspired many other craft programs and served as a model for other weaving cooperatives in the Appalachian Mountains. So I thought it was a kind of interesting model, that the people studying there were weaving, and they were also creating an economy for themselves to make an income. I thought that was kind of an innovative idea. And also that floor looms were used for years in cottage production of cloth, but after the Civil War, many families put away their looms as more industrially produced woven fabrics became commercially available. So kind of that relearning that's necessary to adopt weaving again, because they had gone out of fashion, I guess, for a while. And one of the things I like about this particular flyer, at the bottom it says, Berea College Student Industries, hand woven by girls who earn while they learn. So the other thing I can't get over is how these beautifully woven hand towels and embroidered are like $2.25 or something for 3 of them. So I guess I just think it's interesting that it's like entrepreneurship, right? Like, how do we make a living from what we're doing with our skills in weaving and craft? And then this image I found from right here at UW in the weaving laboratory in 1915. So this was a home economics course catalog. The students applying her knowledge of dyes and dyeing processes and learning the principles and practices of craft weaving. Okay, so let's jump again forward to Linda Berry's work and the Image Lab. I don't know if you know her project, but when I first came to campus, the Image Lab was hosted here at the Wisconsin Institute for Discovery, right across the street. And I loved this building, and I was so impressed by everything that was happening there. But this work, this Image Lab, really caught my attention, right? So on this campus where I'm sort of immersed in all of these high-level research projects, I thought, well, this is cool. She's using drawing and thinking about the brain and the connectivity of creativity and craft within these other sort of math and science disciplines. So I basically, shoved my foot in the door and I said, hey, Linda, you don't do anything in your lab over the summer, right? How about I take it over and we do some weaving in your lab? And that's how I established the Weaving Lab. So in 2016, I did this pretty informally the first year. I had no idea what I was doing on some level. I just took some looms and wheeled them down the street to Linda Berry's Image Lab space. And I made it's called Weaving Lab Plain Cloth Productions. So my idea for this lab was that I could invite the community to sit at a floor loom, see how it worked, and offer participants an easy entry into the process of weaving. It gave me a space to start thinking about the production of cloth that was made collectively. So again, as someone trained as an artist, I'd never really used the loom as a site of production, like thinking about towels or any other utilitarian things you could make on a loom. I'd always use it as a place to make artwork that I would put on a wall, or show more formally. So I was really interested to figure out, how does this work? How am I going to, learn these utilitarian applications? But I guess I wanted to do it collectively, because doing it by yourself can be a sad, lonely practice. So I drew a lot of inspiration from the social energy and utilitarian applications of the early American cottage industry and the model of Berea, which I just told you about. And I wanted to consider these multiple points of entry. One was a historic model of local production and asking whether access to looms as a social destination within communities might create a contemporary analog of the fireside industries of old and create social connection. So thinking about weaving and production and social connectivity. The other side of the project was a little more conceptual, asking participants to approach the act of weaving as an end in itself and consider weaving in relationship to time, rhythm, meditation, materiality, pattern, and process. This is the part that falls under what I call speculative weaving, wanting to get participants to ponder and perhaps reconsider what they know about weaving through the experience of process of these prompts that I'm putting for them. So one of the prompts, and all of them actually were based in stereotypes. So I'd encountered a lot of people that would say things like, well, weaving takes a lot of time, and weaving is really hard. And so I wanted to sort of investigate those stereotypes around weaving. And so I wondered, how much can be woven on a floor loom? Like, how much productivity is really possible? So I made this very ambitious goal to weave 40 yards on a loom that's a bolt of fabric, or as close as I could get to a bolt of fabric, and to see if we could do it. So we did accomplish that. It did take 2 years of weaving throughout the summers. And then I had them made into hand-woven lab coats, because I thought, we were in the weaving lab after all, and we needed our own lab coats from our own hand-woven cloth. So the other question I asked was about the patterns, or sort of the engineering of weaving. So how do loom-controlled patterns and sequences of colors work in the creation of hand-woven cloth? So this fabric I then made into, it's much more vibrant and red in my slide, so don't think these dingy colors are how it really looked. But I liked the idea of having people explore patterns and colors and how each one of these pillows is different, because all the pillows, like everyone contributed to each different one, right? So I didn't control that, it's just the hands of everyone coming together. It represents the work of many hands. Weaving is often associated with the passage of time, thread by thread being laid into the open shed of cloth. We think about Penelope, both weaving and unweaving, to ultimately inventing time with her work, if you know that myth, to avoid marrying another suitor when her husband was fighting the Trojan War. To spare herself, she insisted that she'd wait until she had woven a shroud for Laertes, father of Odysseus. Every night for 3 years, until one of the maids revealed the secret, she unravels the piece that she has woven during the day, so that she will not have to give up hope for the return of her beloved husband to remarry. But I love that story because I think weaving must take so much time that no one noticed that it was taking her 3 years to weave something, because they just thought, well, that's how long it must take. But really, she was unweaving it every night. So in this project, each participant agreed to sit down and weave for 1 hour. So I liked the idea that this became a timeline of their effort, and I wasn't judging them on their speed. I was just sort of thinking about it as a physical evidence of their production within that time. The next year I did one called the album towel, where instead of basing it in hour time, they had to listen to an album as they wove it and weave side A and weave a right twill and then turn the record over and weave a left twill. And see, these are some of their projects, and I tried to document with assistants. I had assistants who I'll talk about in a minute, what they listened to while they were weaving. And then the next one was about meditation. So often I hear people say that they get into a flow, or weaving is very meditative. So I thought I need to set up a loom to really explore that idea. So these were called meditation mats, or essentially they're rag rugs, but we took old denim and muslin from the fashion department up there and made it into strips that we then wove into these mats. Even making the strips of the Denim was kind of meditative. It's very slow. You just have to sit with it. And this was the second year we did the project. We did it black and white.
Marianne, how wide is that loom there?
I would say it was 30 inches wide. So finally, here you're all wondering, where's the loom, the Hello Loom come into this? So what happened in the first year was that a lot of people came, and I was really excited by the turnout at Weaving Lab, but a lot of them say, well, I'm really interested, but I can't stay. I don't have time to stay. And I was like, well, I want to send you with something. I want to be able to send you home, just keep thinking about this. And so eventually, I made the thing on the left, which I had measured the size of my iPhone, this one right here, and made that really crude first version of the Hello Loom, thinking like, okay, well, I at least can pass it out, I can distribute it. That's something I love to do with my work. So that was the first iteration, and then it was fine, but I thought even more seductive, just like the iPhone, let's put rounded edges on it, and let's really make it something you can put in your pocket and take with you. So it really was born, the invention was born of this bigger project called Weaving Lab. And we have a laser cutter in our department, gratefully. So the first designs were just cut there, and I could do it pretty cheaply. I started with like a cardboard, not a cardboard, like a compressed board, and it wasn't strong enough. And then finally I moved to a wood, and it really did hold up a lot better. And I really wanted the needles to be embedded, and so I knew it had to be a thick enough material that could make a needle as well. And it was pretty exciting because we started implementing them at Science Saturdays. So it was able to do something that the floor loom couldn't really do because it was distributable and small. One of the things that I really wanted in the design of the loom was, I like it as a frame. I like it as a loom, but I also like it as a framing device for the weaving itself. So I thought, instead of taking it off and hanging it or trying to make it into something, let's just put a stand in it and show it proudly as what it is, which is a beautiful weaving. So the kickstand is part of it. You'll see different iterations of the loom along the way. Like this one, the wood's a little thicker, the hole for the needle. I mean, it's gone through a lot of evolutions. These were a lot of samples that I was making at the beginning just to see what I could do on the loom. And as Tom mentioned, what happened after the project sort of finished in 2017, I just had people who kept saying, well, how do I get one? How do I get one? How do I get one? It's like, well, the project's over, I don't know. And that was sort of the aha moment that like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll make it into a business. Because truly, and this was the case with my first business as well, is like entrepreneurship and connecting people with things that they want sort of has to happen through business, right? Like you have to create an object that they can sort of then buy or have. So that's how it evolved into that. And then of course, I had to figure out what to call it. So I wanted to, just tell you guys, well, why the name Hello Loom? Well, first of all, I mean, maybe it's obvious that the phone is a place of communication. It's based on the design of the phone on some level for its portability. As you could see with most of the other looms, excluding maybe that one there, looms are pretty big and bulky. So unlike our friend here who's knitting, as she's sitting here, there's not a lot of people you'll see weaving as they're sitting there because they're tied to a loom, a big loom. So portability was key in this design, and the idea of having it be in your pocket, something you would take away, something you would bring with you, take it on a trip, that was what was really exciting to me. So Hello Loom was partially inspired by the phone itself, and my idea that weaving is communication, right? We weave in messages, textures, colors. Weaving is a mode of communication, so I liked that. But there's also a link to computers, and I'm going to talk about that as well. So. And I also loved this sort of little nugget that the first coding said hello world. And I liked that Hello Loom was sort of like relating weaving as coding. Anyway, I'll talk about that more. And then the link between computers and weaving. So this is what I'm going to get into right now in the binary of weaving. So the phone being a handheld computer, it's pocketable, it's portable. Weaving has embedded messages, so I sort of already covered those things. So let's talk about what I mean with binary and what in the world does weaving have to do with computers. So This slide's nice because it shows lots of binary systems, and weaving is one of them. So there's the I Ching, there's a light bulb on off, there's electricity, there's Morse code, and here's a weave draft on the right there. And so a weave draft, weaving itself is binary. Again, let's remember what weaving is: intersection of threads, warp and weft. And there's two options ever. The warp is either over the weft or the weft is over the warp. And that is the binary nature of weaving. Within that, there's billions of different outcomes that could happen with just the simplicity of that. So let's go to here. And let me describe what a weave draft is a little bit. So if you look at what looks like checkerboards and just pixels on the top, it's really how we encode the pattern for weaving. And what it means is anywhere you see a black square, it means the warp is over. Anywhere you see a white square, the weft is over. And that's it. If you understand that principle, you can read a weave draft, more or less. So what you're seeing here is a weave draft for plain weave, a twill weave, and 8-harness satin weave. And it has to do, the next underneath the graph, you can see the cross-section of the weaving, right? So the plain weave, the one that looks like a checkerboard, is over, under, over, under. Everyone understands that, right? But with a twill weave, you're skipping. So it's going over, under, like 2, under 1, 2, over, so it's skipping. So it's a whole different system, but it's a tacking method, or I'm calling it a structure. I realize that I'm calling it a weave structure because it's a system of interlacements of the thread. But in Scandinavia, for example, they say binding. Here's the binding. And for some reason, that helps a little bit more, I think, when you think of it as like this is how the cloth is bound together through these intersections and these systems. Maybe this slide is a little bit more helpful in terms of just understanding how you go from this enlargement of the intersections of the warp and weft to seeing that physicality of how the weft is going over or under, and then the resulting feel of the cloth. How many of you have denim jeans on right now? I see you. That's a twill. That's a twill. It's a very hardy weave. We love the twill for heavy-duty workwear, for denim. All your denim jeans are made with a twill weave. Did you know that? All right. Excellent. So satin weave. Satin, all you can think about is like a fancy prom dress or something, right? Something very slick. Because it's trying to hide the weave structure and be as seductively smooth as possible. And then, of course, the plain weave is a workhorse. It's used for canvas, it's used for muslin, it's used for almost everything. Let's go back and see, will this work? Oh, no. I hope I didn't. You never know if you're opening a can of worms here. This is sort of helpful in hopefully, oh, no, it's not helpful. It's basically, I don't know why it's not projecting, but it's, oh, you're not seeing it anymore. Sorry. It's just an animation of showing how the different harnesses are opening or closing to create that opening there, which is the shed. So I just wanted to show you how that works, but the video's not working, so we're just going to keep moving on. And I wanted to talk about this technology because it's pretty interesting. The Jacquard loom, which I'm going to mention here in a minute.
In this segment, we describe how filling yarn is actually inserted into the fabric. Several systems are used to insert the filling. These include shuttle, rapier, projectile, air
What's
jet,
happening?
and water jet.
Now the video is playing without us. Oh, here. Okay, sorry. Here, we're back. Okay, so just in talking about Jacquard, this guy gets a lot of credit for inventing the Jacquard loom, but I just wanted to mention that before the Jacquard loom, so 1740, Jacquard loom came in about 1805, there was this crumb loom, which looks really interesting, right? Where it's like all of these raises and lowers, and But that's basically controlling the patterning, because weaving is binary, so you need the thread up or down. So basically this is holding the pattern information that's sending what to raise and lower. Anyway, I just think this is a less known technology, but I think it's pretty amazing. But Jacquard became famous because the invention that I think it was Napoleon, wanted him to invent this loom for fancy cloth, right? Because we want florals and we want beautiful things on our cloth. And it was really hard to do before this came along. There would be physically two people to operate one loom. There'd be the draw boy, the guy that sat on top, pulling the patterning by hand, and then there'd be the weaver. So it was a two-person operation to weave the fabric. What Jacquard did is it became automated. So you can see that where the arrow is pointing, was this mechanism that turns. So you'd push the treadle, and the patterning gear would turn and bring this next patterning card, which I'm about to show you. And this is a little bit more modern. But these are the punch cards that held the pattern that was then woven into the cloth. And the reason this is important is, again, back to that binary system, this is coded, right? So this is holding the pattern. This is holding the data. This is holding the information of the textile. So as you can see, I'm excited about that. Early data storage, right? This is the beginning of early computing. So I love this image. I actually took this in Florence. I was there for a Jacquard weaving workshop, and they still weave on these looms that use these punch cards. So it's pretty cool. It's telling in a Jacquard loom each and every thread. So on campus here, I have one that has 2,640 threads. Each and every thread is individually operable. I can lift any one I want. And that's what the punch cards are doing. It's allowing any thread across the whole 800, 1,000 to be lifted individually. And up until this, we didn't have that ability unless you had the second person on top of the loom pulling up each thread. So it's not that it wasn't possible. It was possible. It just took two humans. So when Jacquard invented this, sorry, a little side note, everyone got really mad at him because it was taking away the silk weaving jobs in Lyon, France. And they started throwing his looms in the river because they were so mad that their jobs were taken. And here we are back at the Hello Loom. So that is all to say how the idea of the binary and the system and computers and weaving are connected. And I just wanted to play that out a little bit more so you could understand this idea of like having an iPhone-sized loom somehow makes more sense to me now knowing that history. So I hope that makes more sense to you as well. The other thing I just wanted to point out is that it is a tapestry loom in that it's a frame loom. I have no harness system. There's no fancy anything happening. So if I want to make a pattern, I have to physically lift and lower my needle through the threads to create that pattern. And I think that it's a skill to be able to do that, to understand how you're coding manually by threading your needle through those yarns. So when I use the loom, I try to think a little bit more, how do we get what is here? I don't think my mouse is going to show you. On the right, a twill weave, a plain weave, and then a basket weave. How do we get those different weave structures by hand? So one of the things I did when I made the loom is I made these drafting exercises. So you can use these squares to decide what pattern do you want to make on the loom. And then these are the basic patterns of weaving. So you can draft your own pattern and then weave it on your Hello Loom. The next thing I thought about was early emojis. So, because it's the same thing, right? Early emojis were just, was it 12 by 12 pixels, you know, and it was just black and white to try to make it. So I grabbed these early emojis and I made them into a weave draft so that you could weave your emoji. And then I just took some random binary coding and thought like, well, we could weave that too. Because I think there's a lot of interest in trying to figure out how to translate the ideas of codes and systems to physical object making, or at least I'm interested in that. So this couldn't be done without two things, I think. One is a partner, a business partner, and the other is I got a patent, 2 patents. So Erica Hess is my business partner in Hello Loom. I already have a full-time job, as you know, working here. So having a business is really none of my business. I have no time for that. But I took on a business partner, Erica, who was a graduate student and my project assistant, for Hello Loom. So she runs the show, she's amazing. We worked with a ton of different organizations on campus because I don't have the resources to start any of this by myself. So the law clinic, all the places that you would need to make the paperwork and help us figure out strategies. And so that's how we established our business. But I also went to WARF because when I had the solar bag business in my earlier life, we ended up applying for a patent for some of our integration of the solar technology into the accessories. And after many, many long years, we got a patent. So I had some knowledge of this whole patenting stuff. And so when I went to WARF with my design, I didn't know what would happen, but basically we filed for a design patent. And I'm happy to say that we got 2 from the Hello Loom design. And it's a little confusing, and the slide is very light, so it's hard to see. But the patents are assigned for different features of the loom, right? So anywhere you're seeing a solid line is part of the design feature that's specific to Hello Loom. Because, a notch or certain things like that aren't, you can't protect that. Anyone could make a notch and make their own loom. But I think what we're doing is a little specific, and I think our design is better. And you can even see this early design had it was very different than what we have now. But that was pretty exciting. These were just granted actually pretty recently, 2021, September 2021 and February 2021. And now we have lots of products. So here's an example of a 2-color kit. So we wanted to make something that we could get out into stores and start people with 2 colors and you're ready to go. So this has these really cool shuttles or designed wings on the side in fun colors. After a couple years with all of the same original design size, which is the iPhone 8, we launched a bunch of new sizes recently. The one on the right is called Tableau. It's based on an iPad or tablet size. And these other 2 we're calling the Baby and the Bambino. They're really small. We noticed that people like really small things. So we thought, especially with that bottom one, it could be like a perfect stocking stuffer or Christmas ornament or something like that. Which brings me to what is it for? So the Christmas ornament size, all of the sizes. So what we get asked the most, especially on social media, is I'm so excited to weave, but what is it for? What do I do with it? And I wanted to explain that I don't really, I don't want to say I don't care. I do care what it's for. But I don't care that it has to be something else. I think a weaving can be a weaving. Does that make sense? So I looked to my, one of my heroes, Annie Albers, that she says, weaving is an example of a craft which is many-sided. Besides surface qualities such as rough and smooth, dull and shiny, hard and soft, it also includes color as a dominant element, texture, which is the result of the construction of the weaves. Like any craft, it may end up in producing useful objects, or it may rise to the level of art. So I just wanted to give that as a, I think there's value in participating in making it and looking at it and appreciating it. So sometimes I just end with that. But I know most people are like, well, is it a bracelet? Is it for a rug for a dollhouse? Any number of things. And in my world, I don't care. I love the pot holder loom. I think it's so awesome. But I personally don't think it needs to be anything else, which then leads me to exhibitions. So I got to do one of my first exhibitions with the Hello Loom. I was invited to a residency with other weavers. And so I said, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you all a loom. You're going to all weave. We're going to have a pop-up installation. So at the last day of our little 1-week residency, we just set it up very informally. But these are some really great weavers who participated, and we had a pop-up show. Super fun, super easy. I did bring the looms on my Weaving Lab tour, so I got to take Weaving Lab International in 2019 to many different locations. One was Copenhagen Contemporary, and at that location I worked with my friend Sophia Hegstrom-Moller, who's a Danish weaver. I had met her a few years ago, and I'll talk about her a little bit more. But because I knew this Danish weaver, I asked her, I said, do you think we could get Danish weavers to make weavings on these looms that could go in this Hello Loom show? Because I thought it'd be really cool to see a little small example of their weaving research that we could all put together. And she facilitated it. I centered the looms. She invited the artists, because I don't know Danish weavers. These were my 2 assistants. Erica became now my business partner. Kat, I couldn't have done any of these projects without help. These were some of the places that we had set up for small Hello Loom weaving. And then this was, within Weaving Lab, we had this exhibition of these Danish weavers. So it was a really interesting opportunity to have all these people show up with their looms contribution. I got to meet weavers that I would have never met, and it was really exciting to see what they came up with. So this is how we installed them. We made a little map so that we could pass out the map and they could see which artist had made which piece. And then these are just a few examples of what they came up with. Really interesting, fun, amazing stuff. But one of the things I loved about this show is that when they came for the reception, they said, you know, we've never all been in a show together. And I was like, oh yeah, of course not, because how could you show 40 weavers in one show? But by shrinking it down to something this big, all of a sudden, here they are having a show. So I didn't ever think about that when I had this idea, but I love that brought together people who might not have ever showed together. This one is gold, and she burned the loom, which is really cool. This, again, a piece of Sophia's work, which leads me right to this slide, which I'm going to promote her exhibition, which is up right now at our textile gallery. So please head over. It's just up the street. It's open till April 3rd. As part of her exhibition, which I'm not going to get into, you should go see her work, we installed these pieces by the Danish weavers. So their work is just right up the street right now. So I really encourage you to go visit. And also you can sit and weave. So there's a workspace there. And you can see the Danish weavers each made little videos about their process and what they wove. And so you can listen to them as you're weaving and be very inspired. I'm going to tell you more about some workshops and educational connections that we make. So, we really strive to make really good educational materials to go with the loom. So this is an example of some of our instructions. There's all these tutorials that I've made about how to weave, different weave structures. These are on YouTube and our website. I think this is another thing that sets us apart. Clearly, as an educator, I feel like this is a passion of mine to make sure that people have what they need to get started. One of my favorite things early on, this professor at Iowa State was teaching a class about technology and tools, and she said, can you send me the file, and I'm going to have them laser cut them and learn how to weave. And that's a little slippery slope that we can talk about later if you want to, but at that time we let it happen, but they came up with all these amazing weavings. And I mean, in the end, I love that kind of connectivity with the technology that could enable and connect through some of these STEAM programs for kids both in college and in lower grades. And then on the right, this amazing textile historian, Dr. Elena Phipps, uses it to teach really technical pre-Columbian textile techniques to her history classes. And so that really gets me excited too, because before that, she never really had a great tool to use to teach them within her history, the history context. This one's kind of fun. It's paper, handmade paper that's been made into line by Professor Mary Hark students at Oxbow. And then they dip the whole thing in indigo. Love that. And then here's a small workshop that I did in Sweden as part of Weaving Lab there. And then Sophia lives in Copenhagen, and she just is out there teaching loads of workshops with them in Copenhagen. So because of Sophia now, somehow that's the other place in the world besides the US that most people are weaving on these Hello Looms, strangely. But the work she gets out of her classes is really exciting. And these are just some of the other institutions that have been purchasing looms for us over the last couple of years. I would say that we don't have a ton of retail locations that sell the looms. I think that could be a nice thing eventually, but right now it's mostly through our website. And then, of course, I love the social media. So people tag us on social media. Here's a great example, someone weaving themselves a bracelet. So they figured out a really cool way to use the loom for bracelets. These are just some other posts that I grabbed because I thought it was so cool. Pine needles, tapestry, 2 layers. Somehow that loom is purple. Maybe they colored it. I don't know. I love it. And believe it or not, you have a chance just next week to be part of a workshop with Hello Looms and Sophia, who will be here in town next week. It's called Weaving Nuances of Color with Sophia Hagstrom-Muller. So she sent me these beautiful images to share with you about how she's going to talk about transitioning color across a weaving, a small weaving. Can be done with just a gradient of color threads. It can be done with a blend, back and forth, black and white. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. And then other weave strategies to sort of use colors in different sequences. We're excited to be launching some new products really soon, but I can't let the cat out of the bag quite yet. And I want to open the floor for any questions. Thank you for listening.
Did you bring looms to sell?
I did not, but I have looms to look at.
Okay.
They're also for sale at Chazen, actually. That's the closest place to get a loom here in Madison, which is really nice.
Where'd you say?
The Chazen Museum.
Chazen Museum.
Mm-hmm. See, it's really the only place in Madison. But we're happy to ship. Yeah.
Are you familiar with the weavers at Madeline Island?
On Madeline Island?
Mm-hmm. And it's just
Up north?
See.
I know Madeline Island. I'm not sure I know the Madeline Island weavers. I know Washington Island has a weaving school.
Well,
Yeah, Sievers.
so does our Madeline Island weaving project is connected to the church, but all the women and men actually weave all year round. Some of them are fabulous.
Wonderful.
They incorporate the school, they teach the school children.
Oh, cool.
too. So the community part of it, I thought you might be interested
Yeah.
in.
I love that.
Mainly their products are rugs.
Okay. That's awesome. Rug weaving isn't easy, so I love that people are keeping it alive.
And Berea is still in operation.
What is?
Berea?
Oh, Berea. Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes. Actually, I'm part of a conference, and so I meet with them annually.
Can you tell us about the manufacture of the looms, the place of
Sure.
contemporary, the
Yeah.
composition of all that?
So when Weaving Lab first was giving away the looms as part of Weaving Lab, I was cutting them all. And when we transitioned to a business, that's not possible, right? I can't keep cutting looms here at school. Yeah, hand them out, please. Pass them around. And so we researched local companies because it's very important to me that things be made as locally as possible. And so we use a company in Sun Prairie called Routed for You, and they're fantastic, and they do anything, they can cut anything, and for us, they have a quick turnaround, and now it's been, I don't know, 3 or 4 years we've been using them. It's certainly true that we could get these for less money somewhere else, but I like being able to put made in Madison, Wisconsin, on the loom. To me, that's important.
And what is the laminate that it's made out of?
It's a birch. It's an 1/8-inch birch ply. We don't have many issues with breakage, somehow they get the wood really pretty good. There's not like knots in it or anything. Every once in a while, like we had a teacher who wrote a grant to get them for her middle school, and she said, well, a few of them broke, but I think the kids were pulling the yarn really, really tight. And so, I have some sympathy for that, but I know sometimes things break. But we don't have a ton of breakage issues, which is nice.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what looms ahead for your career?
What looms ahead? That's a good one.
I couldn't resist.
I know, it's a great, there's so many metaphors with textiles and weaving. I am most excited, well, I'm pretty excited about having Sophia's show here and bringing the Danish weaving traditions here. But I get to go to Copenhagen in June for a residency to weave there at it's called the Danish Artist Workshop. And I'm pretty thrilled to go and do a residency for a month. So that'll be exciting.
Well, I was going to ask you also, could you say something about the Luddite movement? They were involved in England in destroying looms.
Yes. Yes, I know about the Luddites, but I don't know how they're connected with what was happening in France. I mean, I know that, like, when I was visiting all the museums and such there was one of what I think was the first black flag that became associated with the anarchists that was part of this weaving rebellion. So it said, I don't know the French, but it said, live working or die fighting, something muerte, or I don't know French. But it was this beautiful satin black flag that had that language on it and fringe around the edge. So it wasn't like any utilitarian flag. It was this very beautiful decorative flag. But the silk weaving in France, in this village in Lyon, the looms were in the houses, and the weavers would just weave within their own workshops, so their loom would either take up like their whole living space and they'd have this little lofted bed that they'd sleep in, or it was like, I went to one that was like on the second floor where you're like, how did you get this loom in here? I mean, it's as big as their whole house, but it was their whole lives, it was their whole livelihood. And so you can see how that efficiency, that technology really would have made them had, because it by doing it one person, automating that, took away a lot of jobs. So, I mean, I see why they're mad, but I'm all for innovation as well, so.
A question from online. Are you still working with Tricia Andrew?
No, Tricia left UW-Madison and is working at a different university now. So that has fallen by the wayside.
I found the historical connection between coding and weaving very interesting. Thank you for allowing Racine County 4-H members to come listen to this talk. So this is based on, last night we had our first Racine County 4-H weaving workshop using the Hello Looms, and several of the participants are watching tonight.
Great.
Raj is asking, have you looked at, from the sustainability point of view, the application of etched weaving on double pane and triple pane windows for passive heating and cooling application, where the etched woven material becomes transparent and opaque, depending on the presence of UV light, and therefore saving on heating and cooling energy? That's a new kind of weaving I haven't heard of.
I have not looked into that, but I'm very interested. That sounds amazing. Because I worked on the solar textile earlier with Tricia when she was here, I get emails still almost every week about, can we get a solar textile for this or that? But I like that idea because it sounds like it's more sort of using the quality of the material plus texture to give it a new quality that could be more sustainable. So I think that sounds really amazing.
And then my colleague Jen Reese, who's the Racine County 4-H agent, who helped run the workshop last night online and will be doing another one on Sunday, said Racine County 4-H members from 5th grade to 8th grade did their first session of Hello Loom last night. Do you have any advice for youth who might be trying weaving for the first time?
Be patient. Dexterity doesn't come overnight, so I think it just takes time. Be patient with yourself. You'll get better. Try something really simple, but try something different. Like once you get plain weave, try something else. Try over two, under two. Try different experiments. Try textures. Try. My weaving students in my class the other day, I pulled out old silk ties and they started cutting those up and weaving those. Sometimes it just takes a material inspiration. It can't just be yarn. It has to be, try spaghetti. Try, anything could be a weft. Anything.
I tried spaghetti last night, and it's barely bendable on the pot holder, but it keeps popping up.
Oh,
So you need a weight like you were showing on one of those other
Oh,
ones.
yeah.
Online, they ask, would you please repeat the details of the March 4th event? Can you pop that slide back up, please? Right there. So Friday, March 4th, from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., that'll be Central Time, and that, I'm assuming here is at School of Human Ecology?
Yep, it's right in the School of Human Ecology. So the best thing to do is go, I'm sorry, thank you for having me repeat this. Center for Design and Material Culture, cdmc.wisc.edu was the best way I could figure out to tell you guys.
Will there be any online way to participate in that?
You know, we didn't organize that as of right now, but I am trying to sort of do that as kits, right? Like, so, like Sophia is a great example. So like, she could do this as a, hour-long tutorial, and I've done this as well for some of my own projects on the loom. And then we send them out, and you can do it on your own time, right? And follow along. I like them synchronous, but I think asynchronous has its value too. So what that is, a Hello Loom goal is to like get all these artists and creatives that I know to kind of make specific workshops that go with a kit, and then get you into your next project. Even like a monthly project. I have another friend who does that with her embroidery work, where she sends out a monthly kit with different embroidery projects.
So for people who are listening online, the School of Human Ecology is, how did they get there? How did they park?
It's 1300 Linden Drive.
Okay.
And the parking in lot 20 is probably the best parking, actually.
And that's 1390 University Avenue.
Mm-hmm. And you just park there and kind of walk up the street, and it's right there.
Yep.
Walk behind the parking garage to Linden.
And that's the name of the hall, the name of the building
Nancy
is?
Nicholas Hall, yep.
Great.
And we do have a parking lot under our building, which is lot, I don't know, lot 26 maybe, but there is a parking lot there. It's just very small and often full. But you can sometimes luck out. This is a good time. Maybe you would luck out at this time.
Well, it's also pickup time for the
the preschool now.
Yeah, so I don't know. Well, this will be great. And Science Expeditions is coming up on April 8th, 9th, and 10th, and the Ruth Davis Gallery is open Saturday and Sunday. And if I can talk to one of your students into doing a weaving session like this, where we could do a public weaving, that would be fantastic. Other questions from here in the room? Here you go.
I was just going to say that another strange name for the department where you worked for a while was known as the School of Family Resources, which also confused people.
Yeah. Yes, I did not know about that particular name, but I can see how that would confuse people.
I will put in a plug for, well, I'll invite you to, but I think the Ruth Davis Design Gallery, if I'm using that correctly, is just a splendid place to go see a range of exhibits up close and personal. You can see things. A lot of times you go to museum exhibits and you're pretty far away.
Yeah.
So they're very concerned that you might.
Well, I'll put a plug in by saying we have the Ruth Davis Design Gallery, which has rotating exhibitions and often student work near the end of the semester. We now have this new textile gallery, which is called the Lynn Mecklenburg Textile Gallery, and it's dedicated to textile work specifically because we have this other thing called the Helen Louise Allen Textile Collection, which is 13,000 objects, textile objects from all over the world. And so by having this textile gallery, we have a place to highlight all of our beautiful items in our collection alongside of, this is actually the first contemporary artist having a solo show in this space. So for me, it's very exciting. And she's included a lot of historical examples from Denmark that match some of like our American examples of weaving. So it's really about a conversation between these cultures. And I invite you to come see the show. And then also the textile collection itself is public. So if there's something you want to see in that collection, you send them an email and they'll pull it out and you can go look at it. That is part of the MO of the whole institution, but that collection is available for people to come see what they want.
So I know how to get to the Ruth Davis. I go up the steps, walk in, immediately to the left is that. Where is the Mecklenburg?
Actually, it's so being a textile gallery means that it has to kind of stay darker. You know, you can't just like have all the lights on and have natural light for some sad reason. So sometimes it is a little hard because the doors are often closed for humidity and stuff. But if you're walking into Sohi and on the left is the Ruth Davis Design Gallery, you just keep walking a little bit more and you'll see the Lynn Mecklenburg Gallery.
Okay.
So they're both right on the first floor, very easy to get to.
And which one is having the exhibit that goes through science expeditions dates?
This one, Sophia.
Okay.
There's going to be two exhibitions. One
Yes.
is called Intercambios. It's a collaboration between a lot of UW professors and people in Mexico, I think, artisans in Mexico, and then this show. So you get a real diverse
Great.
look into design.
Thank you. Just a comment, great talk. You made it very interesting. Thanks. Another, thank you, Marianne. An excellent presentation, weaving together the history of weaving and tools, story of invention, and the use of Hello Loom around the world. So, we got one more question.
I was just wondering how familiar you are with industrial strength, you know, the latest, greatest weaving machines with technology, and like those must be amazing.
Industrial looms, specific.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
What are the latest, biggest, greatest technologically advanced
Oh, man.
thing is?
You know, I have a real interest in that side of it, you know, I think because, you know, my colleagues in North Carolina, for example, people who teach textiles there, you know, that's still there. A lot of that weaving technology is there because they're still somewhat producing, but not here in the Midwest. I want to change that, but so they do have access to some of those higher tech looms, and I really do keep my eye on that a little bit. But what I'm involved with is this new Jacquard loom that we have up in my studio, which is a digital Jacquard loom. So the old Jacquard looms had all of this, you needed like 2 stories of height to be able to pull the cards, but this Norwegian woman invented this digital Jacquard loom, where it's connected to the computer and all the heddles are air compressor controlled. So it is very high. I mean, this loom is like the creme de la creme, but it's only a newish loom, and it's designed for prototyping and sort of artists, so that now for the first time, Jacquard weaving was really industrial up until now. But this woman invented it for people like me, for institutions who want to try different things on a Jacquard loom and could never do it before. So it's pretty exciting too, because industrial Jacquard looms, like when I toured Lyon, France, you know, they have a set of materials that are going through faster than your eye you can't even see it, it's going so fast. With this loom here that we have, you're still hand weaving it. So you can throw any material you want through there, right? Like I can try a thick material, a thin material, a thick material. Whereas like on an industrial scale, they can never experiment like that because it's all automated. So I would love to know more, and I want to do collaborations with smaller mills that will take, and there are some really cool, there's actually a couple really cool mills. The one that weaves my blankets, it's made in the USA. They're in North Carolina. There's another company called Wovens, WOVNS.com, that does small scale, really beautiful high-end production. You can send your design and they'll weave it on these really beautiful different fabrics. So there are like little bits and pieces that we can do here in the US, which is really cool. But I guess my primary output is on the one I have up here.
Is Mohawk carpet still around?
Mohawk carpets.
Yeah, they were in Amsterdam, New York.
I don't know.
In December, I came up to your exhibit for your class, and the students had the exhibition.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your work with weaving and the kinds of biosensors, light emitting, that kind of cool thing? Go ahead.
So I teach a class called Wearable Technology with Professor Kevin Ponto, who's more of an engineer. But together we work to get the students to like come up with their own idea for a project and then iterate that project before the end of the semester. And so Tom's talking about our showcase event where we have them show off their wearable technology. So we're using all different kinds of sensors, heart rate sensors, pressure sensors, motion sensors, sound sensors, and like trying to figure out new ways to have like haptic experiences with clothing. I haven't been able to integrate weaving into that yet, and part of it is because you kind of have to know how to weave before you can even start applying it in a class like that. But we do get them using like conductive threads. They're doing so much sewing with conductive yarn, conductive thread, and they're learning how to, a lot of them have never made anything before, so I'm teaching them how to sew on a sewing machine. You know, they have to do very basic like making, but then they also have to integrate all the technology themselves. It's pretty fun, actually.
I was very impressed with the levels of some of the students, what they were able to do, and it's like, wow, that's not obvious at all. And the computerized, the software that some of them were putting into their projects was also impressive.
I want to show you guys one thing.
So the software's data collection continuous because well, it's like the watches people have now, only it's going to
See
be
if I can find it.
clothes that you can collect data from continuously.
I just wanted to show you, oops, that's not what I wanted. How do I find it? Anyway, I have a UW-Madison, why can't I make it work? UW-Madison Textiles is the hash. So if you go to, at UW-Madison Textiles, you'll find a bunch of, oh my gosh, I just want to see the thing. I don't know how to make it work. But you'll find all of our projects. Like you can follow and see, like my weavers just got off like 5 yards. There's 17 different examples of all their woven cloth. So it's really fun to be able to share with the public what they're doing. I wish I could get a picture for you easily, but it's not accessible right now. Anyway, that's where we share a lot of what's going on in our classroom. So at UW-Madison Textiles is what I use to repost what my students are up to.
Well, thank you very much, and I wish you all the best of luck with this, and thanks for all your help with the 4-H weaving projects.
Oh, yeah.
And we're looking forward to collaborating with you in the coming months. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Did you want